In today's video, we're going to be talking about Dynafit's newest version of their long distance trail running shoe, the Ultra 100. Let's get into it. I wish I would have brought a wet cloth to this shoe because it is looking dusty. I did bang off the bottom so I wasn't getting mud and sand everywhere, but I've been putting this shoe through its paces and it's really looking like I've been getting some good use out of it, which I have. Okay, before we go any further, we got to start with price. And the Dynafit Ultra 100 will cost you $170 or $169.95. And honestly, I think that's a little on the high side, but we do have to look at the competition. We also have to look at what you're getting for $170. And when we look at what Dynafit has done with this shoe, and you hear about what this shoe feels like on the trails, I really think that $170 is something that you will be able to wrap your head around. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, you get a lot for that $170. Now, I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about this shoe that I live in Florida, and I live in a part of Florida that is not particularly hilly. It's definitely not rocky, most definitely not mountainous, and that is where this shoe is going to shine. However, I do have a lot of trails around where I live, and I do take them out on shell, on sand, on roots, on muddy courses, and I've taken it to some hills where I've been up and down kind of sandy, rocky areas. And in my testing, they have performed extremely well. All right, let's just talk about weight, because weight is something that I don't want you guys to get hung up on, because the shoe is a little heavier. Well, it's not totally heavy, but it's certainly not light. It's right in the heavier end of the spectrum. Now, Dynafit does say that the shoe weighs 309 grams, but they don't give an idea of what size that corresponds to. It's probably a US men's size 9. So remember that, 309 grams for the sample size, but in my size, a US men's size 13. The Ultra 100 tips the scale at 13.5 ounces or 381 grams. Now, yes, that does sound quite heavy, especially in my size, but the shoe rides incredibly well. And during my testing, now before I tell you about during my testing, remember this is an ultra endurance shoe, so it's made to go 50, 100 miles. My longest run in this shoe was 11 miles. So I didn't test it out by doing an ultra marathon. But saying that, I had no ill effects from the weight of the shoe. It felt good when it's on my foot. It felt very protected, but we'll get more into that in just a second. And I would have absolutely no problem in choosing this shoe for a more technical ultra marathon. So when you're out there running 50 or 100 miles, when you're out there for a very long time, time is the element here. You want your feet to be protected, and the Ultra 100 certainly does that. And not only are your feet well protected in the Ultra 100, just I want you to look at it. It looks like a serious trail shoe to me. Like, this looks like the type of shoe that you could put your faith in and go out there and scramble up and down mountains. And when I've been running in it in the very minimal trails that I have at my disposal, it has given me that kind of confidence where I want to go and do something like really serious trail running. So let's start at the top, let's work our way down. And the first thing we're going to talk about is this heel collar right here. And I'm just going to hold it up. I'm going to overlay something so you can see it, but we have quite a bit of cushioning around this heel collar. And this is pretty indicative of what we're going to talk about with the entire shoe. There is a lot of cushioning, there is a lot of comfort built into this shoe. And it seems to me that that is what Dynafit has been going for with the Ultra 100. Yes, it's got some serious trail running chops, but they want you to be comfortable while you're out there doing it. Like when you're out on the trails for 12 hours or more, it's already going to be uncomfortable. You want your feet to be babied as much as they can, right? I think the Ultra 100 are going to do that. We have a mesh upper, although there are a lot of overlays giving it protection, which give you that feeling that this shoe is going to protect your feet from anything that comes at it. In this colorway, we have this very pronounced overlay right around the toe box, just keeping it nice and high off your toes. Got some overlays right along the eyelet chain. We have this big overlay coming right around the heel. We've got the heel preloader. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Dynafit logo is just on the lateral side. And yeah, all in all, we've got a shoe that is going to protect your feet extremely well. Let's come back to the heel counter. And as you would expect, it is very rigid. I mean, extremely rigid. Like I can press all the way down to, oh, I don't know, like the middle of my heel, where you can feel that internal heel counter that's just giving your heel a good lockdown. Now, also some technology that Dynafit uses in a lot of their shoes is the heel preloader system. Basically, it's this TPU band that kind of wraps in, comes along here, comes around the back of the heel, and it's not attached to the back. Like I can stick my finger in it like this and kind of pull it out. And ultimately what it's there for is to increase that heel hold. So obviously when you're scrambling up and down mountains, when you're running around switchbacks, when you're coming downhill, there is the potential for a lot of movement in your foot within a shoe. The Ultra 100 combats that by having this extra heel preloader system on top of this rigid heel counter, and that just locks in your heel phenomenally. It locks in your heel very well. I felt extremely locked in and very secure when I'm scrambling up and down very sandy and rocky terrain. Dynafit does say that the Ultra 100 bridges the gap between comfort, traction, and energy return. And that is actually some marketing speak that I can get behind and confirm. The shoe is comfortable, it definitely provides traction, and the energy return was surprisingly good and noticeable. As big as this shoe looks, even on camera, it didn't feel clunky at all. Okay, let's talk about the laces. Let me just pull the laces up. Look at those, they're nice. They're kind of round laces. I actually really like the laces, and when I cinch it down, they give me a good lockdown across my midfoot. The laces didn't come untied. They did everything that we want in laces. I just also like the way they look. But if you look at this overlay along the eyelet chain is actually inside the shoe. And then we have this little piece of kind of netting covered in like a TPU kind of cover. This is Dynafit's invisible lace system, and basically all the laces are underneath this little cover. And when you tie your laces, you just tuck it in, and then the laces aren't going anywhere. They're not going to get caught on anything. And moreover, when you're scrambling around, when you're running through trees, bushes and rocks, nothing's going to catch the laces, nothing's going to get caught in there. It's going to prevent debris from getting into your foot, which when you're out there for a very long time, that is the absolute worst thing to happen. When you have to stop, take off your shoe, dig out a little stone that made its way in. And I actually really like the way it looks. Now, of course, it's going to work. You're actually covering a major point of ingress into your shoe, like through the laces and down the side. But it also makes the shoe look very aerodynamic. Like if you were running into the wind is just going to scoop right over the top without all these laces getting in the way and messing up your aerodynamics. Okay, let's talk about the tongue. The tongue is underneath all of this, and the tongue is actually worth thinking about. Now, you can see if I hold it up, we've got the Dynafit logo right in the middle. And right here in the middle, there is no padding, but the padding comes up the sides. So the padding is right here on both sides, and then the padding comes together in a V right underneath the logo, and it's fairly padded. It's not padded in the way a daily trainer is padded. It's more like a thick race day shoe kind of padding, but it is more than enough padding to get the job done. I didn't have any lace pressure on the top of my foot. Now, the tongue is not gusseted, but what you can't see because of this invisible lacing system is that there are two lace loops, one on each side of the tongue, and that provided just a good lockdown when I tie the laces so the tongue isn't sliding around. In all of my testing, I didn't notice the tongue sliding to the side and getting uncomfortable and having to retie the laces. Once I tied this shoe, it was on my foot for the duration of the run. And ultimately, isn't that what we want? We want to just set it and forget it. Okay, something new that Dynafit has changed in this year's version of the Ultra 100 is the midsole. Now, they've reformulated their EVA midsole, and now it weighs 20% less than traditional EVA and also has a 10% greater energy return. Now, I didn't run in previous versions of the Ultra 100, so I can't really say if it is lighter or has more energy return, but I can say that as far as the energy return goes, the shoe felt very nimble on my foot, and I feel kind of funny saying that it felt nimble on my foot because in my size, 380 grams isn't exactly a glass slipper, and yet it does feel that way when I'm scrambling up a hill or charging down. Now, what we haven't mentioned yet that I usually mention in an earlier part of my video is the stack height. The Ultra 100 has 32 millimeters in the heel, 26 millimeters in the forefoot for a 6 millimeter drop. I think that is very much a sweet spot. Got no complaints with a 6 millimeter drop. It felt good all the way around. Now, 32 millimeters in the heel, that's getting onto a max cushion shoe. And the thing about max cushion shoes when you're in the trails is that, I don't know, when you're trail running, you kind of need to feel the earth a little more than you do when you're road running. I mean, when you're road running and you're doing intervals, you do want to feel the ground, right? That ground feel just feels good. And I think it's even more important when you're running on sketchy terrain and you may slip or you may roll an ankle. You need that proprioception, and that all starts with your connection to the ground through the feet. Now, all that to say this, even though there was 32 millimeters in heel, 26 in the forefoot, I felt very connected to the ground. I didn't have the ground feel like I felt like I needed more protection, but I had ground feel like I knew where I was at all times. It's a very difficult concept to try and describe. But even though I couldn't feel the little stones that I was running over, I had a good sense of where I was, and I didn't feel disconnected from the trails that I was running on. That makes sense? I hope that makes sense. I want to come down to this outsole. And the outsole, I don't know, I don't want to say it's great just because it's an outsole, but it is pretty great. Now, they're using Vibram Mega Grip compound and these Vibram traction lugs. Now, they're 4 millimeter lugs, and I don't know if you can see, they're kind of in a chevron pattern. And I found myself when I was running uphill and especially running downhill that I just wanted to test these lugs. This shoe gave me a feeling of confidence that I just wanted to bomb the downhills, round corners, and kind of see if I can get these shoes to slide a little. And I was surprised at how much grip I have. Now, I know bombing down hills and trying to make the the shoe slide, pretty irresponsible. Always irresponsible because I'm testing them for you. Whichever way you look at it, I actually had a really good time and the shoe was remarkably stable and felt like it was holding me in place. Now, when I was going uphill, I had it in my mind, you know, the chevrons pointing forward. When I'm running uphill, if I slide back a little, it's gonna grip on, kind of pull me forward. Obviously, that isn't anything, but it's what I was thinking when I was running uphill. And maybe because I was thinking about it, it actually came true. Like these shoes gave me some incredible Spider-Man grip. So I've kind of been talking about ride this whole time, so I'm not gonna get too far into it. I just want you to know that the midsole feeling of this shoe is not firm and not soft. Like with 32 millimeters in the heel, you may think that the ride is going to be kind of plush. But Dynafit seems to have struck a good balance between not too soft, not too firm, right there in the Goldilocks zone. It's actually a very nice feeling when I'm running. As far as flexibility goes, yeah, not too flexible, but flexible enough. But one more thing that I found, and you may have seen that Dynafit sizing is a little off. Even on Dynafit's site, they're saying that you should size up half a size from what your normal size is. That wasn't actually the case with me. I wear a US men's size 13 in most shoes, and in the Dynafit Ultra 100, I also ordered a US men's size 13, and it fit perfectly. So I know I am just one person, and it's an anecdotal experience, but for me, true to size. Keep that in mind. Also, as far as fit goes, I had a lovely amount of room in the toe box. Now, I think my feet may skew to the more narrow size. Looks fairly wide. If you have a little wider feet, I think this would also work for you. Now, if you have run in any Dynafit shoes, I want to hear from you. Have you actually ordered the new pair of the Ultra 100? Let me know in the comments. And if you have made it to this point in the video, why don't you drop the mountain emoji in the comments so I know that you've made it to the end. And with that, my name's Matt B. This has been my review of Dynafit's Ultra 100. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.